General Hyunwoo Lee stood in the war room deep beneath the Colorado mountains. The room buzzed with activity as dozens of officers worked at computer stations. Large screens showed the positions of ships and installations throughout the solar system. Most of the galaxy thought Earth had no real defenses. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Report," Hyunwoo said to his aide, Colonel Jinho Park. "3 alien fleets are moving toward our system," Jinho said, pointing at the main display. "The Vextari First Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Quintal territory 2 days ago. Intelligence suggests they'll arrive here in 4 months. And the others? The Quintal are massing a swarm fleet of bioships. The Mordan Empire is sending their 3rd battle group." Jinho paused. "General, they're not even trying to hide their movements. They think this will be easy." Hyunwoo nodded grimly. "Good. The more confident they are, the less prepared they'll be for what's waiting." On the moon, Commander Bo-Ra Song watched as the last piece of disguised armor plating was welded into place. To any observer, Luna Base looked like a collection of research stations and mining facilities. In reality, it was the most heavily fortified position in human space. "How long until the railguns are online?" she asked her chief engineer. 18 hours for full power," came the reply. "The magnetic field generators are already charged. We could fire now if we had to." Bo-Ra looked out through the reinforced window at the Earth hanging in space. Soon that beautiful blue world would be under attack. But the aliens were going to get a surprise they'd never forget. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt, construction crews put the finishing touches on weapons platforms that looked like chunks of space rock. Each platform held enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, but from the outside they appeared to be nothing more than mining operations or scientific stations. Dr. Jae-Sung Choi worked frantically in his laboratory on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Around him, the most advanced weapons in human history took shape. Project Sledgehammer had been in development for 20 years, waiting for the day humanity might need to defend itself against superior alien technology. "The kinetic bombardment satellites are ready," he told his assistant. "Each one carries a tungsten rod that can hit with the force of a nuclear weapon, but without the radiation." "What about the antimatter warheads?" the assistant asked. "Those are still experimental," Jae-Sung admitted. "But if the aliens break through our first lines of defense, we'll use them anyway." In the outer solar system, beyond Pluto, Captain Min-Ho Yoon commanded the experimental stealth frigate Soul's Pride. His ship was invisible to most sensors, using technology that Earth scientists had developed in secret over decades. He and his crew watched as alien scout ships passed by, completely unaware of their presence. "They're only scanning the inner planets," his sensor operator reported. "They're not even looking for military installations out here." "Perfect," Min-Ho said. "Let them think we're all huddled around Earth like frightened children. When the shooting starts, we'll show them how wrong they are." The alien intelligence gathering was exactly what Earth's military leaders had hoped for. Vextari scouts observed the obvious military bases, the surface installations that any world would have. They saw missile silos, Air Force bases, and naval fleets. What they didn't see were the hidden facilities built into mountains, the underwater bases, or the weapons platforms disguised as civilian structures. On the Vextari flagship, Intelligence Officer Klex reviewed the data from their reconnaissance missions. "The humans have approximately 2,000 nuclear warheads," he reported to Fleet Admiral Krex. "Their most advanced fighters use chemical rockets. Their largest ships can barely reach their own moon." Admiral Krex made the crystalline sound of dismissal. "Pathetic. Our point defense systems can stop their missiles before they leave their atmosphere. This will be over in hours." "What about their orbital installations?" Klex asked, pointing to images of several space stations. "Research facilities and communication relays," Krex said with confidence. "Nothing that could threaten a real warship. Proceed with the attack plan as scheduled." Similar scenes played out on the Quintal hive ships. Brood Commander Zekth studied the reports from their bioscouts, small creatures that could slip past most detection systems. The scouts had found evidence of human military activity, but nothing that worried the insectoid commander. "They breed slowly and think even slower," Zekth told the other hive leaders. "Their weapons are crude and their tactics predictable. We will overwhelm them with numbers and be done with it." What the aliens couldn't see were the real preparations happening across human space. In facilities buried miles underground, weapons that had never been tested in combat were brought online. Satellites that looked like space debris powered up their systems. Ships that didn't appear on any public registry moved into position. Back on Earth, Admiral Tejo met with President Ji-Hai Moon in the secure bunker beneath Seoul. The president looked tired and worried but determined. "How much do they know?" she asked. "They know what we wanted them to know," Tejo replied. "Our old weapons, our public facilities, our obvious defenses. They have no idea about the real military buildup." "And you're certain this will work?" Tejo was quiet for a moment. "Ma'am, for 30 years we've been preparing for this day. Every human colony, every space station, every mining facility has been built with defense in mind. We've hidden weapons in places they'd never think to look, and developed technologies they don't know exist." He activated a holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots appeared throughout the display, each one representing a hidden weapons platform or defensive installation. "The aliens see a primitive world with basic defenses," he continued. "What they don't see is that we've turned our entire solar system into a fortress. Every asteroid, every moon, every seemingly empty piece of space has been prepared for this moment." President Moon stared at the display in amazement. "I knew we were building defenses, but this is what happens when humans have time to prepare," Tejo said grimly. "The aliens think they're attacking a defenseless world. They're actually walking into the most elaborate trap in galactic history." Deep in space, automated systems began their final preparations. Weapons that had been dormant for years came online. Sensors that had been disguised as scientific equipment started tracking the approaching alien fleets. Communication networks that appeared to be civilian infrastructure prepared to coordinate the defense of humanity. The aliens continued their approach, confident and careless. They had divided their forces into 3 separate fleets, each one certain it alone could conquer Earth. They planned to arrive weeks apart, giving each group a chance to claim the glory of victory. It was exactly what Earth's defenders had hoped for. In the command center, General Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as the first alien fleet moved closer. In a few months, the Vextari would drop out of hyperspace expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they would find themselves facing weapons and tactics they had never imagined. "Remember," he told his staff, "the key to this defense is surprise. They have to believe they're winning right up until the moment we spring the trap." The countdown continued. Across human space, millions of people went about their daily lives, most unaware of the massive military preparation happening around them. But in hidden bunkers and disguised installations, the defenders of humanity made their final preparations for a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The space around Neptune shimmered and twisted as reality tore open. 200 Vextari warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls catching the distant light of the sun. Fleet Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the shattering light, and felt satisfied with what he saw. "All ships report successful transit," his communications officer announced. "Formation is holding steady." Through the bridge's transparent walls, Krex could see the other ships of his fleet. Each vessel was a work of art, grown rather than built, their crystal structures capable of focusing energy into devastating beams. The largest ships were over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could tear apart mountains. "Begin the advance toward the human homeworld," Krex ordered. "Standard approach pattern. I want them to see us coming." The fleet moved forward at a leisurely pace. There was no hurry. Human technology was so primitive that they could barely detect objects beyond their own moon. By the time Earth's defenders realized an attack was coming, it would be too late to organize any meaningful resistance. On Luna Base, Colonel Sung Jin Nam watched his screens as the alien fleet appeared on long-range sensors. The Vextari ships showed up clearly, their crystalline hulls reflecting electromagnetic radiation in ways that made them easy to track. They weren't even trying to hide. "Contact General Lee," Sung Jin told his communications officer. "Tell him the party guests have arrived." Deep in the Colorado bunker, General Hyunwoo received the message with grim satisfaction. "How long until they reach engagement range?" he asked. "At their current speed, 6 hours, came the reply from his tactical officer. "They're taking their time, sir. Almost like they're sightseeing." "Perfect," Hyunwoo said. "Alert all hidden installations. Execute Plan 7 in 5 hours and 55 minutes, not a second before." Throughout human space, the message went out through buried communication lines and quantum-encrypted channels. On seemingly abandoned asteroids, Weapon systems that had waited years for this moment began their final power-up sequences. In installations disguised as mining operations, crews took their positions at controls for weapons the aliens had never seen. Major Yunji Han climbed into the cockpit of her fighter at a base hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Her squadron had been waiting for this day for 3 years, training with experimental aircraft that officially didn't exist. Now they would finally get to test their skills against real enemies. Remember, she told her pilots over the comm system, wait for the signal. No matter what happens, no matter how tempting it gets, wait for the signal. The Vextari fleet continued its stately advance through the solar system. Admiral Krex was in no hurry to end what promised to be a very short war. His intelligence reports indicated that the humans had fewer than 50 ships capable of space combat, and those were little more than armed cargo vessels. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "we're detecting some unusual readings from the asteroid belt." Krex looked at the display with mild interest. "Define unusual. Energy signatures, sir. But they're very faint. Probably just solar collectors or mining equipment." "Continue monitoring, but don't worry about it," Krex said dismissively. "Human technology is too primitive to pose any threat." What the Vextari sensors couldn't detect were the dozens of weapons platforms hidden among the asteroids, their signatures carefully masked to look like harmless industrial equipment. Each platform held enough firepower to cripple a capital ship, and they were all aimed at the approaching fleet. On Earth, Lieutenant Dalsu Kang sat in a communications bunker beneath Seoul, listening to the aliens' radio chatter. The Vextari weren't even bothering to encrypt their transmissions. "They're discussing how to divide up our planet after they conquer it," he reported to his supervisor. "Admiral Krex wants to turn Earth into a museum. Something about preserving primitive cultures." The supervisor shook his head in disgust. "Let's see how primitive they think we are in a few hours." As the alien fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, they finally sent their surrender demand. The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies, meant to reach every human in the solar system. "People of Earth," Admiral Krex's translated voice echoed across human space, "you are now facing the first fleet of the Vextari Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our territory. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick and painless. Resist and we will make your final hours very unpleasant indeed." The message continued for several minutes, detailing the aliens' terms for surrender. They were generous in their own way. Humans would be allowed to live as long as they served their new masters faithfully. Earth's resources would be exploited, but carefully, to preserve the planet's value as a curiosity. What the aliens didn't expect was the response that came back. "Vextari fleet," came a calm voice from Earth. "This is General Hyunwoo Lee of the Earth Defense Force. Your surrender demand has been received and rejected. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave our solar system. This is your only warning." The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds before the Vextari bridge crew erupted in what passed for laughter among their species. "Did they just threaten us?" asked Krex's tactical officer in amazement. "I believe they did," Krex replied, his voice carrying both amusement and contempt. "How refreshingly primitive. Begin the attack. Target their orbital installations first, then their military bases. Try to keep civilian casualties below 50%. We'll need some of them alive to work the mines." The Vextari ships spread out into attack formation, their weapons beginning to charge. Energy built up in their crystalline hulls as they prepared to unleash destruction on the helpless human world. At exactly the moment General Lee had specified, humanity revealed its true face. The first sign something was wrong came when asteroids throughout the belt suddenly lit up with energy signatures that definitely weren't mining equipment. Massive railguns, hidden for years among chunks of space rock, swiveled toward the alien fleet and opened fire. The projectiles were simple chunks of metal, but they were moving at significant fractions of the speed of light. When they hit the Vextari ships, the results were devastating. Crystalline hulls that could absorb energy beams shattered like glass under kinetic impact. Admiral Krex watched in shock as 12 of his ships simply vanished, torn apart by weapons that shouldn't have existed. "What was that?" he shouted. "Where did those shots come from?" "The asteroids, sir," his sensor officer replied, his voice high with panic. "They're not asteroids, they're weapons platforms." Before Krex could process this information fully, the second wave of the attack began. Satellites that had appeared to be space debris suddenly activated, revealing themselves to be sophisticated weapons platforms. They launched swarms of missiles that moved with inhuman precision, each one guided by artificial intelligence systems that the aliens had never encountered. The Vextari point defense systems, designed to stop energy beams and conventional projectiles, were useless against weapons that kept changing their attack patterns in real time. Dozens more ships died in the first minute of combat. Evasive maneuvers, Krex screamed, but his ships were too close together, having formed up for what they expected to be an easy bombardment. They collided with each other as they tried to scatter, creating more chaos. From Luna Base, Colonel Sung Jin added to the confusion by activating the moon's hidden weapons. What the aliens had thought was a research station was actually the most heavily armed fortress in human space. Major Yun-ji led her fighter squadron out from their hiding places among the asteroids. Her pilots flew ships that used technology decades ahead of anything the aliens had seen from humanity. They moved through the confusion of the battle like sharks through a school of fish, picking off damaged enemy vessels with precision strikes. Within 10 minutes of the battle's start, half the Vextari fleet was destroyed or crippled. Admiral Krex, his flagship badly damaged, finally understood what had happened. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat immediately. Prepare for hyperspace jump." But as his surviving ships tried to escape, they discovered one final nasty surprise. Unknown to them, humanity had been secretly developing hyperspace jamming technology for years. Hidden transmitters throughout the solar system activated, creating interference that made faster-than-light travel impossible. The Vextari were trapped. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, the alien ships were hunted down and destroyed by weapons they had never imagined and tactics they couldn't understand. When it was over, not a single Vextari vessel remained intact. Admiral Krex died when his flagship's reactor overloaded, still unable to believe what had happened to his invincible fleet. His last thought was confusion at how primitives with chemical rockets had managed to destroy 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. In the aftermath, cleanup crews from Earth moved through the debris field, salvaging what they could from the destroyed alien vessels. The technology would be useful, but more important was the message this battle would send to the rest of the galaxy. General Hyun-woo stood in his command center, looking at the tactical display that showed nothing but human-controlled spacey. Brood Commander Zek felt the vibrations through the living hull of his flagship as 500 bioships dropped out of hyperspace. The Quintal swarm fleet had arrived at the edge of the human solar system, and Zek was confident this would be an easy victory. The Vextari First Fleet had vanished without a trace 2 months ago, but Zek wasn't worried. Crystal ships were fragile things, too dependent on technology. The Quintal way was different. Their vessels were grown, not built. Living creatures bred for war over millions of years. "Begin breeding combat drones," Zek commanded through the hive-mind connection that linked all Quintal together. "I want 1,000,000 warriors ready when we reach the human world." Throughout the fleet, the bioships began their work. In specialized chambers deep within their hulls, genetic material mixed and combined at incredible speed. Within hours, each ship would carry thousands of warrior drones ready to swarm over human defenses. On Earth, Admiral Narration watched the alien fleet's approach from her command post in the Himalayas. The facility looked like a weather station from the outside, but it was actually the control center for humanity's deep space defense network. "They're bigger than the Vextari fleet," her aide observed, pointing at the tactical display. 500 ships, and they're all organic. Our kinetic weapons might not be as effective." "Maybe not," Nari agreed, "but we have other surprises prepared for them." Dr. Young-Soo Park worked frantically in his laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps. For months, he and his team had been developing weapons, specifically designed to fight biological enemies. The Quintal thought their living ships were advantages, but they were actually vulnerabilities that humans could exploit. "The virus is ready," he told his assistant. "It targets the specific protein chains that Quintal use for neural connections. Once it gets into their systems, their hive mind will start to break down." "What about the biological warfare agents?" the assistant asked. "Those are nastier," Young-Soo admitted. "They attack the Quintal immune system directly. Their own bodies will start to reject the bioships they're riding in." Captain Woo-Jin Lim commanded the stealth destroyer Incheon's Hammer from its hiding place among Saturn's rings. His ship was invisible to most sensors, using advanced cloaking technology that made it appear to be just another chunk of ice and rock. "The swarm is passing Jupiter," his sensor officer reported. "They're moving faster than the Vextari did. Looks like they want to get this over with quickly." "Let them come," Wu Jin said grimly. "The faster they move, the less time they'll have to react when we spring the trap." The Quintal fleet moved through the solar system in a formation that looked chaotic but was actually carefully planned. The bioships could communicate instantly through their shared consciousness, allowing them to coordinate in ways that mechanical fleets couldn't match. Brood Commander Zekth was pleased with their progress. Unlike the slow, predictable Vextari, his forces could adapt to any situation in real time. If the humans had somehow defeated the crystal ships, they would find the Quintal much harder to stop. "The human world grows larger," reported one of his sub-commanders through the hive mind. "Sensors detect the same primitive installations the Vextari observed. No signs of advanced weapons." Zeketh felt satisfaction ripple through the fleet consciousness. "Excellent. Begin final approach. I want the first drones launched as soon as we reach orbital distance." What the Quintal couldn't detect were the preparations happening throughout human space. Unlike the kinetic weapons used against the Vextari, this battle would be fought with more subtle tools. Biowarfare laboratories that had been hidden for decades prepared their deadliest creations. Computer systems designed to hack alien technology powered up for their first real test. The attack began when the Quintal fleet reached the orbit of Mars. Unlike the Vextari, they didn't bother with surrender demands. The hive mind had already decided that all humans would die, and individual opinions didn't matter in their collective consciousness. The bioships opened like flowers, releasing millions of warrior drones into space. Each drone was the size of a small fighter craft, but they moved like living things, swarming toward Earth in patterns that looked organic and natural. "Begin Phase 1, Admiral Nari ordered from her command center. The first wave of Earth's defense wasn't kinetic weapons or energy beams. Instead, clouds of what looked like space dust began spreading through the solar system. The particles were too small for the Quintal sensors to track individually, and they seemed harmless enough. They weren't harmless at all. Each particle was actually a microscopic drone carrying a payload of biological warfare agents. As the Quintal warrior swarms passed through the clouds, the particles attached themselves to the organic hulls and began their work. Within minutes, the effects became visible. Warrior drones began moving erratically, their biological systems shutting down as engineered viruses attacked their nervous systems. Entire swarms simply died in space, their pilots unable to control ships that were no longer responding to their commands. "What's happening to the forward scouts?" Zekth demanded through the hive mind. "Why are they going silent?" The answer came in the form of even more devastating attacks. Hidden satellites throughout the solar system began broadcasting signals designed specifically to disrupt Quintal neural networks. The aliens' greatest advantage, their shared consciousness, became a liability as computer viruses spread through their mental connections. On the flagship, Zekth felt the hive mind fragmenting around him. Sub-commanders who had been connected for their entire lives suddenly couldn't communicate. Bioships that had operated as a single organism began acting independently, and not always rationally. "Impossible," Zekth clicked in his native language. "How do they know our biology so well?" The answer was simple. Humans had been studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on for years. When the Quintal had sent their bioscouts to observe Earth, human scientists had captured several of the creatures and learned everything they could about alien biology. Now that knowledge was being turned into weapons. Dr. Youngsu watched from his laboratory as his creations did their work. "The protein chain disruptors are working perfectly," he told his team. "Their hive mind is breaking down exactly as predicted." The next phase of the attack was even more devastating. Captain Wu Jin's stealth destroyer launched a spread of torpedoes that the Quintal never saw coming. But these weren't ordinary explosives. They were biological weapons designed to attack the living hulls of the bioships themselves. When the torpedoes detonated, they released clouds of engineered bacteria that began eating through the organic armor of the alien vessels. The bioships' own immune systems turned against them as the bacteria convinced their bodies that they were under attack from within. "The hull is dissolving," screamed a Quintal commander as his ship literally began digesting itself. "We're losing structural integrity." Similar reports came from throughout the fleet as the biological weapons did their work. Ships that had seemed indestructible minutes before were now falling apart, as their own living tissue turned against them. Brood Commander Zeketh tried to rally his forces, but the hive mind was too fractured to coordinate a proper response. Individual ship commanders were making their own decisions, and most of those decisions involved panic. "All ships retreat," Zeketh ordered, but only half his fleet could still hear him through the damaged neural network. "Return to hyperspace immediately." But just like the Vextari before them, the Quintal discovered that escape wasn't possible. The hyperspace jammers were still active, trapping them in a solar system that had become their graveyard. The final phase of the battle was almost anticlimactic. With their hive mind shattered and their bioships dying around them, the surviving Quintal could offer little resistance to the human cleanup crews that moved in to finish them off. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, hidden throughout the solar system, activated in sequence. The beams were invisible but deadly, designed specifically to disrupt the biological processes that kept the alien ships alive. One by one, the remaining bioships simply stopped functioning, their crews dying as life support systems failed. Admiral Nari watched the tactical display as the last Quintal signature disappeared from her screens. "That's all of them," she reported to General Lee. "Total victory. No survivors." The aftermath was even more thorough than the victory over the Vextari. The biological weapons had been so effective that there wasn't much left to salvage from the alien fleet. Most of the bioships had simply dissolved, leaving only scattered organic matter drifting in space. But the real victory wasn't the destruction of the fleet. It was the message it sent to the rest of the galaxy. Two major alien powers had sent their best fleets to conquer Earth, and both had been completely annihilated without a single human casualty. In secret facilities throughout human space, scientists began preparing for the next phase of the war. The Mordan Empire was already moving ships toward the solar system, convinced that they could succeed where the others had failed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. General Hyunwoo stood in his command center, looking at intelligence reports from across the galaxy. President Ji-Hai Moon stood at the podium in the United Nations building, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind her, a massive screen showed the debris fields where two alien fleets had once threatened their world. The silence in the room was complete. "6 months ago," she began, "the galaxy laughed at our defenses. They thought we were primitive. They thought we were weak. They thought we would be easy to conquer." Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. They were wrong. The screen changed to show intercepted communications from across the galaxy. Alien voices translated into human languages spoke of fear, confusion, and growing panic. The news was spreading through every star system. Earth was not the helpless world they had believed it to be. Grand Admiral Seok-ho Bae sat in his office deep beneath Seoul, reading reports from human intelligence services scattered across the galaxy. The information was both satisfying and concerning. Satisfying because their enemies were finally taking humanity seriously. Concerning because that meant future attacks would be much more dangerous. "The Mordan Empire has recalled their third battle group," his aide reported. "They're requesting immediate negotiations with Earth through neutral channels." "And the others?" Seok-ho asked. "The Siskatar Republic is offering us a defense treaty. The Zephyrian Collective wants to trade technology. Even some of the smaller powers are sending diplomatic messages." Seok-ho nodded grimly. "Fear makes excellent diplomacy. What about the species that were planning to attack us? Most have backed down, but we're still tracking 3 fleets that seem determined to test our defenses. The Cathari Dominion, the Nexus Confederation, and something called the Void Hunters. Let them come," Seok-ho said quietly. "The galaxy needs to understand that attacking humanity is a very bad idea." Ambassador Yoo-Jin Lee prepared for the most important diplomatic mission in human history. She would be returning to the Galactic Council, but this time the circumstances were very different. Instead of begging for membership, humanity would be demanding recognition as a major power. Dr. Hae-Won Kim, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, had prepared detailed files on every species they were likely to encounter. "Remember," she told Yoo-Jin before the departure, "they respected strength from the beginning. Now they fear us, which is even better. Use that fear." The journey to the Council Station took 2 weeks aboard humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, the Soul's Honor. Unlike the simple transport that had carried the first human delegation, this ship was clearly built for war. Its weapons were visible, its armor was obvious, and its escort of 6 attack cruisers sent a clear message about humanity's new status. When the human fleet arrived at the Council Station, they found it surrounded by the largest gathering of alien warships in galactic history. Over 3,000 vessels from dozens of species floated in defensive formations around the station. It was the galaxy's insurance against another human surprise attack. Ambassador Yujin smiled as she looked at the alien fleet through the bridge windows. "They're scared," she said with satisfaction. The council chamber had been redesigned since her last visit. Additional security measures were everywhere, and the seating arrangement had been changed to give humanity a position of honor near the center of the room. It was a clear sign that their status had changed dramatically. Councillor Vrak was there, his crystalline form dimmed with what humans had learned was the Vextari equivalent of shame. Hive Queen Zith represented the quintel, though her usual confidence had been replaced by nervous clicking. The Mordun delegation flickered with colors that their translators identified as anxiety and respect. "Ambassador Lee," Councillor Vrak began, his voice carefully controlled. "The Council welcomes humanity's return. We regret the misunderstanding that led to recent hostilities." Yujin almost laughed. "Misunderstanding, that was one way to describe the complete annihilation of 2 invasion fleets, Councillor Vrak," she replied calmly. "Humanity appreciates the Council's new perspective on our capabilities. We come here today not as supplicants, but as equals." A ripple of unease went through the assembled aliens. The word equals carried implications that made many of them uncomfortable. "Perhaps," suggested the Morden representative, "we should discuss the terms of humanity's full membership in the Council." "Full membership is no longer sufficient," Yujin said, activating a holographic display that showed the solar system. But this wasn't the primitive defense grid the aliens had seen before. This was the true extent of human military power, revealed for the first time. The display showed weapons platforms throughout the solar system, hidden bases on dozens of moons and asteroids, and fleets of warships that officially didn't exist. It was clear that humanity had turned their entire star system into the most heavily fortified position in known space. "By the void," whispered a delegate from the Antaran Empire. "How long have you been building this?" "We began serious military preparations over 30 years ago," Yujin replied. "We knew this day would come eventually." The implications hit the aliens like a physical blow. For 3 decades, while they had dismissed humanity as primitive and harmless, the humans had been secretly preparing for war on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. "But your technology," protested Hive Queen Zith. "Our intelligence reports showed chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Primitive kinetics and crude electronics. Our old technology," Yujin corrected. "We showed you what we wanted you to see. Would any of you have left us alone if you'd known our real capabilities from the beginning?" The silence that followed was answer enough. President Moon's voice echoed through the chamber as a recorded message began to play. "To the species of the galaxy," the president said, "humanity extends an offer of friendship to those who wish it, and a promise of destruction to those who threaten us. We ask only to be left in peace. Those who cannot grant us that peace will discover what happens when humans are forced to fight." The recording showed footage from the battles against the Vextari and Quintal fleets. The aliens watched in stunned silence as their supposedly superior technology was systematically destroyed by weapons they had never imagined and tactics they couldn't understand. "These battles were our warning to the galaxy," Yujin continued when the recording ended. "Humanity has no desire to conquer other worlds or build an empire. But we will defend ourselves with whatever force is necessary." Grand Admiral Siakho's voice joined the presentation through a secure communication link. "Several species are still planning attacks on our world," he said calmly. "The Cathari Dominion has a fleet moving toward our space. The Nexus Confederation believes they can succeed where others failed. The Void Hunters think their stealth technology will give them an advantage." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They're all wrong. Humanity has prepared defenses that you cannot imagine, and weapons that you have never seen. We've spent decades studying your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Any fleet that enters our solar system without permission will be destroyed completely. There will be no survivors and no warnings. The threat was delivered in such a matter-of-fact tone that it was somehow more terrifying than any amount of shouting or posturing would have been. "Counselor," Vrack spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition," Eugen replied simply. "Humanity claims the Sol system and all space within 50 light-years of Earth as our sovereign territory. We want full council membership with all rights and privileges. We want formal treaties guaranteeing our independence. And we want assurances that no species will ever again consider attacking our world." "And in return?" asked the Morden representative. "In return, we'll share some of our defensive technology with council members in good standing. We'll provide protection for worlds that request it, and we'll help maintain the peace that this galaxy has enjoyed for so long." The negotiations continued for 3 days. When they were finished, humanity had gained everything they asked for and more. The Sol Accords, as they came to be known, established Earth as one of the galaxy's major powers and created a new balance of forces that would last for generations. 6 months later, Admiral Tae-ho Kim stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest diplomatic station, built in orbit around Earth. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going peacefully. The station was busy with trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. "Hard to believe it's the same galaxy that laughed at us a year ago," said Dr. So-Min Park, joining him at the window. "Fear has a way of changing perspectives," Tae-ho replied. "The species that once mocked our primitive weapons now treat us as equals. Some of them even ask for our protection." "Do you think it will last?" So-Min asked. Tae-ho was quiet for a moment, watching a Vextari trade ship dock at one of the station's ports. "As long as they remember what happened to the fleets that attacked us, yes. Fear fades with time, but it fades slowly when it's based on real experience. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humanity. The species that had once planned to divide up Earth now competed for human friendship and alliance. The primitive world that had been seen as easy prey was now recognized as one of the most dangerous military powers in known space." Admiral Tae-ho Kim stood at the center of the massive Galactic Council chamber. The room was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange lights floated in the air, casting colors he had never seen before. Around him sat the representatives of dozens of alien races, each one looking at him like he was some kind of amusing pet. The crystalline beings called the Vextari made soft ringing sounds that their translators turned into laughter. Their bodies looked like living glass, tall and sharp. The insect-like Quintal clicked their mandibles together in what Tae-ho had learned was their version of chuckling. Even the energy beings known as the Morden flickered in patterns that seemed mocking. "So," said Counselor Vrack, the lead Vextari representative. His voice came through the translator as smooth as ice. "Earth wishes to join our council. How interesting." Tae-ho kept his face calm. He had been a military man for 30 years before becoming Earth's first diplomatic representative to the galaxy. He knew how to hide his feelings. "Yes, Counselor. Earth believes we can contribute to the galactic community." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Hive Queen Zith, the Quintal leader, leaned forward on her 6 legs. "Contribute? What could your primitive world possibly offer us?" Dr. So-Min Park, Earth's chief scientist on the mission, stepped forward. She carried a data pad with Earth's defensive specifications. The Council had requested these as part of the membership process. "Our military capabilities, for one thing," she said quietly. This caused an explosion of noise. The aliens made sounds that the translators couldn't even convert to words. Finally, Vrack held up one crystalline hand for silence. "Your military?" Vrack's tone dripped with amusement. "Show us these capabilities." So-Min activated her datapad. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing Earth's defensive systems. The aliens leaned forward to look, and Tae-ho watched their expressions change from curiosity to outright disbelief. "These are your weapons?" asked a delegate from the reptilian Sikatar Empire. "Chemical explosives? Kinetic projectiles? Metal tubes that shoot pieces of metal?" The hologram showed Earth's nuclear arsenal, missile defense systems, and naval fleets. To human eyes, they looked impressive. To the aliens, they apparently looked like toys. "You still use chemical propulsion for your spacecraft," observed a Morden representative, its energy form pulsing with what seemed like barely contained mirth. "And these nuclear weapons, they split atoms? How wonderfully primitive." Hive Queen Zith stood up, her massive form towering over the human delegation. On Quintal worlds, our larvae play with more advanced weapons than these. You use gunpowder and uranium? We stopped using such things 10,000 years ago. Teho felt his jaw tighten, but he kept quiet. Somin continued the presentation, showing Earth's orbital defense platforms and ground-based installations. Each new display brought fresh waves of alien laughter. "Look at this," said Vrak, pointing at the hologram with one sharp finger. "They build concrete bunkers, concrete, as if solid matter could stop our phase weapons. And these flying machines," added another Vextari. "They burn fuel to push air around. Do they not know about gravity manipulation? Antimatter drives? Quantum tunneling?" The presentation went on for an hour. Each system that Earth considered advanced brought new mockery from the assembled aliens. Their railguns were quaint metal accelerators. Their stealth technology was crude, light-bending. Their cyber warfare capabilities were basic computer tricks. When Somin finally turned off the hologram, the chamber fell into a silence that somehow felt worse than the laughter. Counselor Vrak stood up, his crystalline body catching the strange lights of the chamber. "Humans of Earth," he said, his tone now almost pitying. "Your desire to join our community is like touching. But surely you understand that membership requires certain standards." "What standards?" Teho asked. "The ability to defend oneself, for one," said Hive Queen Zith. "Your world would be conquered in days by even a small fleet. How could you contribute to our mutual defense agreements?" A Morden delegate pulsed brighter. "Perhaps they could serve as a supply world. Their chemical manufacturing seems adequate for basic materials. Or as a research subject," suggested a Sikatar. "It would be interesting to study a world that never developed beyond kinetic weapons." Teho felt his hands clench into fists behind his back. Beside him, Somin's face had gone very pale. They had known this might happen, but experiencing it was different from imagining it. "However," Vrak continued, raising his voice over the murmurs of the other delegates, "the Council believes in giving all species a chance to grow. We will grant Earth provisional membership." The word provisional hung in the air like a threat. "What does that mean?" Somin asked. "It means," said Hive Queen Zith, "that you will be under the protection of the Council. Your world will be safe from external threats as long as you remain cooperative." Teho understood the real message. Earth would be a vassal world, protected but controlled. They would have no real voice in galactic affairs, no independence, no freedom to make their own choices. "We appreciate the Council's generous offer," he said carefully. "We would like time to consider the terms." "Of course," said Vrak. "Take all the time you need, say 6 months? That should be long enough for you to understand your situation." The way he said it made Teho's blood run cold. 6 months wasn't a suggestion, it was a deadline. The formal session ended soon after. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, Teho caught fragments of their conversations. The translators couldn't keep up with all the different languages, but he heard enough. "Such a weak world, easy pickings, the minerals alone would be worth the effort? No. Real defenses to speak of." When the chamber was finally empty except for the human delegation, Somin collapsed into a chair. "That went worse than we expected," she said. "Did it?" Teho asked quietly. She looked up at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" Teho looked around the empty chamber, making sure they were truly alone. "They believe exactly what we wanted them to believe." Somin's eyes widened. "You mean—" "I mean those specifications you showed them were very carefully chosen," Teho said. "We showed them our old technology, our public technology, the weapons and systems that any intelligence service could discover with basic surveillance." "But what about the rest?" Somin whispered. Teho smiled grimly. "The rest remains hidden, and now we know exactly how the galaxy views us. Weak, primitive, helpless." He looked toward the door where the alien delegates had disappeared. That kind of thinking is going to get a lot of them killed. As they left the council chamber, neither human noticed the small listening device attached to the underside of Teho's chair. The device had recorded everything, including his final comments. In a ship orbiting the council station, Counselor Vrak listened to the recording and made a sound like breaking glass. Vextari laughter. "Foolish humans," he said to his aide. "They think they have secrets. They think they can deceive us." He crushed the listening device between his crystalline fingers. "Soon they will learn what happens to worlds that try to play games with their betters." The countdown to Earth's conquest had begun, and neither side fully understood what they were walking into.